So today we're going to talk about lines, angles, and leaves. We'll start off with just the basics of lines and what it means to be in line and out of line, and how you recover. We're going to talk about obstacle balls, and we're going to talk about general principles in leave. After that, there's going to be a second part to this video, and in the second part of the video, we're going to talk about some more advanced topics, like specifically where you want to be when you're talking about being in line, being out of line, and how you recover, and taking advantage of some well-known angles and well-known multi-cushion shots in order to get your leaves, or in some cases to make the shot. So let's talk about the basics of leave. So the idea is that, and by the way, I've changed the camera angle, so let me know if this is a better angle. I think it will be, because it'll be a little easier to see what's going on and what's happening. Okay, so when you go and you watch people who are really good at the game, and you see how they're shooting, one of the comments you hear all the time is, gee, he makes it look easy, or wow, that was just natural. You'll hear those kinds of comments, and it's not because the table was necessarily an easy table to get out on. It may simply be that the person understood how to leave shots and how to get the most out of the position that they have. Okay, so let's talk about a concept here. It's called being in line. Okay, so being in line means that, let's take this example, and we'll continue to use the 9-ball metaphor for this. So the 5 comes before the 9. Being in line means that when I shoot it, if I don't put any English on it at all, and I make the shot, well, chalk probably would have helped on that. Being in line means that if I shoot the shot and I don't put any English, I just make it, I'm naturally going to head the way that I need to go. So in this case, because my object ball, the 9, is to my right, I need the cue ball to be left of center on that object ball. And so when I say left of center, what I mean is if you draw a line, imaginary line, through the center of the pocket, through the ball, the cue ball is on the left side of that line. And that's what they call a natural leave, meaning I don't have to do anything special, I just have to make the ball, and I'm going to give a leave as long as my speed is right. Okay, that's called being in line. Being out of line would mean that because of where I'm located, if I shoot this and make this, I will not naturally get an easy leave on that 9. I'm going to have to do some work, do something like go around the table in order to get my leave. It's called being out of line. And if you are, and sometimes it's recoverable. You can put a whole bunch of English on this and just hold the cue ball up when it hits the rail, and I still have my leave. But I'm out of line if there are other balls that have to be shot. Let's say the 9's down here, and I've got the 4, and then I've got the 5, right? So in order to be in line, I need to be on the 4 in such a way that I can get on the 5 in a natural leave for the 9. So I have to actually hit it and come out far enough to get across that midline that we just talked about, across this line, get over here somewhere so that when I shoot the 5, the cue ball stays naturally down here. Okay, and as you expand the table and you have more and more balls on it, it's easier to get further and further out of line. And so your first goal when you get out of line is to get back in line. As long as you're in line, it's just a matter of making balls. And that's where that whole thing about he made it look easy comes from. It's because he had the natural leaves and the natural lines, and in this case, because he needs to get over out here, actually want to be on the right side of that ball, of that midline, so I can get out here. And now, even though I'm on the correct side of the 5, I'm out of line because unless I am just very, very accurate, staying down there for the 9 becomes difficult. And I may have to come around the table. So that's what in line and out of line mean. Now there are some angles that make it easier to stay in line or to recover from being out of line. Both in terms of angles on your shot and of angles coming around the table. And we'll talk about those in the next video. One of the things that happens all of the time, and I promised a while ago that we'd talk about this, so we will. What happens if I'm straight in? If I am straight in on the shot, in theory, there are only 2 ways I can go. I can follow it into the pocket, or I can draw back. And this is where a lot of people make a mistake and they draw. The fact is that this pocket is more than 1 ball wide. If I shoot the 5, if I'm straight in on the 5, and I shoot it so that it hits here and goes in the pocket, that means that I've actually created a little bit of angle there. And even though this is exactly dead straight into the center of the pocket, it means that I can create an angle and come around it. And the same thing works the other way. If I shoot it so that it goes here, then I create an angle and the cue ball can come around this way. And quite often people make the mistake, and it's a huge mistake, of having this straight in shot and trying to draw it. Can I do it? Yeah, if I pay attention and I focus and I hit it just right, yes, I can draw it and I can make myself a really nice little shot down there. But you know what? The difficulty of doing this is about twice as much as the difficulty of just cheating the pocket and going forward. You want to remember, when you're shooting, English is a tool. And any kind of spin is just a tool. What you want to do is you want to create the angles that make it easy to get on your next shot. And if you get those angles created, then the whole game becomes a whole lot easier. And you have no issues whatsoever. It's very easy to do. So the technique we talked about just now, where you're straight in and instead of shooting it to the center of the pocket, you shoot it off to the side, it's called cheating the pocket. When you hear somebody say that he cheated the pocket, that's what they're talking about. The other thing you can do is when you shoot and you have spin on the ball, and I'm just going to put this up here so we can emphasize it. When you have spin on the ball, notice that those did not go straight. The cue ball tended off to the side that I put the English on, and the object ball tended the other way, which created a little bit of an angle. And if you saw it, the 5 hit here, and the cue would have hit here. So I created almost an inch by doing that. And if I had top English on that, which doesn't work when they're frozen like they just were, but if I have top English on that, then even though I shoot this straight into the pocket, I create all kinds of angle. You see that even though that was straight, the cue ball actually hit here. That's the concept of throwing the ball. And that comes into play when you cut balls in, comes into play all kinds of places. Anytime you have side spin on the cue ball, there's an effect on the object ball, and if you can control that effect, you will have a big advantage going into the game. Something else to know is that it's not always the same effect. And what I mean by that is, if I shoot this one and cheat the pocket, I didn't cheat the pocket, I threw the cue ball, but you saw I hit it pretty hard and I hit right about here. If I shoot that same shot and I shoot it soft, I pick up even more of that effect, but the cue ball doesn't bounce as far. And so I get a little bit more effect here, and you saw that the object ball went in the side of the pocket. It did that because of the action of the spin, not because that's where I aimed it. I was aimed at the center of the pocket, but by spinning the ball, I was able to make the object ball go off to the side. And that's another form of throw. And then there's versions of it when two balls are frozen and a whole bunch of other things, and we'll go over those someday. I'll go into depth about swerve and throw. But the basic idea is that the cue ball, if you spin it with side spin, will tend to the side of the spin. So if I put right hand English, the cue ball will tend to the right. This object ball will tend to the left. The next object ball would tend to the right in a combination. The next one would tend to the left, and so on. It alternates each ball. And that's important to know when you have multi-ball combinations that you're also putting English on. So just a technique, if you're straight in, is to spin the heck out of it and let the spin do the work of getting the cue ball from following it into the pocket, which again will allow you to put that nice top English on it. Something to note, the English is going to be going the wrong way every time. So if I put top right on this, the cue ball is going to tend to the right, which means that it does not have running English when it hits that rail. It has opposing English. If I hit it on the right, the cue ball is going to spin counterclockwise. And so when it hits that rail, it's spinning counterclockwise, which means it doesn't take off, it dies. So you're not going to get the around the table action by doing that. Instead, what you have to do is cheat the pocket. And it helps to know about this throw, because if I want to hit this rail with left English, and I'm straight in on it, I know that if I put left English, and I aim slightly to the left of the pocket, I can actually aim right here on the pocket and create that much angle, because the action of the spin is going to push the 5 back to the right. Remember, if I put left hand English, it makes the cue ball go to the left, it makes first object ball go to the right. So I can actually aim it right here with left hand, with top left. The spin will cause the 5 to ease over, and now I've cheated the pocket. I've created this big angle, and now I can go around the table. And you see how much angle I had on that when I hit the rail. So throw is a very, very useful thing to have. So really that's the essence of it. And again, when we talk about table analysis and we talk about how to figure out where we're going, what we're doing, object balls, or obstacle balls. So what is an obstacle ball? An obstacle ball is a ball that's in the way of me getting my leave. So let's say that I have a table something like that. Okay, I got the one down there, I've got clear shot on it, but the 2's all the way up the table. When I'm making my decision on how I'm going to get up the table, the ideal answer would be to hit this rail and come out and bounce off here and just come down. Unfortunately, the 7 is an obstacle to that, because if I shoot that shot, and let me just make it a bigger obstacle, I shoot that shot and I hit the 7, I don't get down here. and then I'm in trouble. I'm shooting for my life. So the obvious choice of trying to come down and go around the table to get down there isn't so obvious anymore. Well, there's another way I could do it. I could hit it with left English and come around the table and bounce off there and come out for the two. But I've got all this traffic in here. So when I'm assessing the table and I'm looking for the best way to leave that ball, what I'm very specifically looking for is the best way to leave that ball without having to touch another ball. Very specifically, I'm looking for the way to get on my next shot without touching any of these other balls. Unless there's a breakout I need to do, and that's a whole other case, and we dealt with that in the strategy one. So what I'd want to do here is I'd want to just go ahead and shoot the one in, come straight up and down the table, and although that's not, as you'll see later, not the ideal angle to approach this two on, it's the safest because I'm not trying to move through traffic. I've just got a straight up and down the table shot. And see there, I hit the three, now I'm dead. Let's try that again. Probably should have put spots on the table for this. Oh, that's way up. Just try putting a little English on it. Okay, so that worked out kinda because I got a hit that helped me get in the right position. But the downside is, you see what I just did to the four, I made it very difficult to make that four. So that's why you don't want to hit balls when you're doing this. You just want to move around the table in clear space as much as possible, unless you have a problem ball that you have to break out. So again, looking at this whole side of the table is clear. I can just run down the table for the three. No danger of hitting ball anywhere. Now, when I'm shooting on this four, I don't want to have to go this way. I want to be in here. I want to be in here where I can shoot it up in that corner without anything in my way. And I want to have enough angle to get over on the five so I can shoot this in and come out here and hopefully get myself a nice shot. Well, kind of, sort of. Could have used some more speed. I'm still on the right line though. Remember I was talking about lines? On the right line, shoot it up the table. If I make it, which I didn't, then I end up with the shot on the five and the six and I'm out. So the idea is to try to avoid having to touch any other balls. You want to run them as they sit. You don't want to try to bounce off other balls except in those strange cases where either you might have a case like this where you've got a shot like that that's going to be really hard to hold for the six, where I might deliberately come down and bump that nine, but I'm bumping that nine knowing that this end of the table is empty, so it really doesn't matter where it sits, I'm still going to have a shot on it. I'm not going to get myself in trouble doing it. So I might actually deliberately come out and try to hit that nine to give me the leave on the six. Those come up, they're really rare. You don't want to go there if you don't have to. In my video from April 10th, the one that was the first time I picked up the cue, in the very first rack, there's a shot where I had to bump a ball because it was a problem ball. It was a four ball sitting right here. I had to bump it because it was in a bad place. So I used it to bump it out, and I also used it to stop the cue ball with a perfect leave on the 2-3. And so that's what that was all about. But in general, the idea is to move around the table without having to move the other balls. Quite often you'll find that even with a cluster of balls, there's a way to go through it and make the shots without moving anything very much. Not always the case, but very often it is. So So that's it. One other thing about lines. Lines extend the entire length of the table. This is important. And we're going to talk about this definitely in the next one. If I have the 6 and I want to shoot it in this corner and I want to leave the 7, and this, by the way, is a really good position to have to shoot, because I could either go this way with top and just roll out, or I can go this way with draw and roll out, or I can go this way and come around. That's about the perfect place for that 6 ball to be. But let's say it's a little bit different. Let's say it's there, okay? And I want to shoot that 6 and have a good shot on the 7. Well, the best way to do that is going to be to have the cue ball on the left of that center line. Here's our center line. Okay, cue ball on the left. But the interesting thing about this is, if we leave that center line out there, it really doesn't matter whether the cue ball's here, or here, or here, or all the way back here, or over here, as long as it's past that center line. That might be a little tough, getting a little out there. The idea being to get into that sweet spot where you can make the ball and easily get your lead without having to do a whole bunch of English to get there. In a perfect world, and there have been books written on this. There's one called The Pleasure of Small Motion. I forget who the writer of that one was. The idea was, keep your cue ball from running all over the table. Try to keep it to just small motions, and try to use either stop or just very minor English to get in your position without using a whole bunch of side spin, because side spin makes the shot harder and it makes the lead harder in many cases. So with that, I'm going to leave you on lines, angles, and leaves part 1. Part 2, we're going to dig into that a whole bunch more. And we're going to really get into it. So with that, I will let you go, and we'll see you in the next one. And again, don't forget, subscribe, leave comments if you have questions, happy to answer them.